Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our final CPAT webinar of the year. First of all, thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you to the NCCS team for putting this together and to our sponsors for the CPAT program. I'm really delighted to have to introduce for you today Kathy Washburn, who is a cancer survivor, a certified holistic cancer coach, and a CPAT member. She came to our symposium in June this year and went to the Hill with us to talk about cancer policy issues. For those of you who may not be CPAT members, you can join CPAT on our website and learn about all of our CPAT offerings, including our symposium for next year, which will be in June 2024. So Kathy's going to talk to us today about really about life after cancer, permission to feel. I love that. And we all here know that cancer's not over when treatment ends, and that we hear from cancer survivors in our state of survivorship survey that they don't get as much help with the emotional side of cancer as they need. And so I think what we're going to hear from Kathy today will be really helpful to all of us, even those who are not cancer survivors, because I think there's a lot of, she's going to talk about emotions. But I think obviously it's tailored specifically to cancer survivors. So Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Oh, before I do, just you can ask questions in the chat. We'll get to the questions at the end. We have some questions that came in advance, and we'll try to address some of those as well as any questions that come up. And we will send out a recording of this within the next week for anybody who would like to see it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. It is such an honor to be here. The work that is done at NCCS and CPAT is extraordinary, and as we all know, so incredibly necessary. As Shelley said, I am a cancer survivor. I'm a 20-year cancer survivor this past November. And what is often not mentioned is that 20 years ago, cancer found me at the 11th month of a 12-month yoga teacher training program. And I say that because I was probably in the best shape I've been in my whole entire life. So to have cancer show up in a body that was, in my opinion, as physically strong as I ever been, I was always perplexed by that fact. And in fact, I said to my oncologist, how could this be? I'm so physically healthy and mentally healthy. I was meditating and doing all the things I thought was healthy. And the only thing he said was, yeah, you're right. Other than cancer, you're a very healthy young woman. So that fact has always perplexed me. And fast forward 20 years later, and I went through the holistic cancer coach training as well as a positive psychology program. And in there, I learned about the work of Lydia Temashok. She is a researcher, and she came up with what's called a type C coping mechanisms, or a type C personality. Now, you may know about a type A or type B. Those are fairly well known. The irony of this is Dr. Temashok's work was done at the same time as the researchers for type A and type B did their research. And type A was specifically focused on heart patients, in a cardiology department. Lydia Temashok used the exact same questions that were used in the study that came up with type A. She used those questions in a group of cancer patients and HIV positive patients, and got the exact opposite answers. In fact, type C coping mechanisms or coping behaviors are conflict resistant, emotional suppression, and people pleasing. And what she determined is that when people relate to these coping mechanisms, it reduces their immune system. So it makes them prone to dis-ease or diseases such as cancer in a way that type A personality traits make people prone to heart disease. So when I found out this information, it was the missing link to my cancer. Now, I'm not saying that I caused my cancer or that emotional repression was the reason I got cancer. It is just one more piece of the puzzle, in my opinion, and a lever that we can all pull to help ourselves be healthy. You know, we often get told, yes, you can change your diet, exercise, stop smoking, eat right, but not many people say, how are you emotionally? So that is what we are here to talk about. And what I've learned is that positive psychology is often the door that opens to allow us to begin feeling again. Because type C behavioral patterns, this way of being where we're people pleasing and resisting conflict and suppressing our own emotions, often result in an inner turmoil that that is not healthy for us. So I'm going to share with you just three things that I've learned about emotions that have helped open the door to this emotional, let's say, awareness that can lead you down a path to emotional health. The first one is, did you know that you're not supposed to stuff your emotions and leave them there? Now, I'm from New England. Emotions were never encouraged, expressed, and certainly not talked about. My diary was where I gave my emotions voice, and that thing, it came with a lock and a key. So it turns out that emotions are designed to be fleeting. They are energy in motion. It's this stunningly intricate design that allows us to take information through our senses and quickly discern whether to move toward or run away from something. How quickly? Jill Bolte Taylor, a Harvard-trained brain scientist, tells us it's 90 seconds. So mom was right when she told us to count to 10. The research shows that the chemical and physiological effects of an emotion will flush through our body in just 90 seconds unless we choose to stay in that emotion. So I'm going to give you an example that I use with a lot of my clients. Many of us go through what we call scanxiety. You're entering the very room that maybe you had a scan done and it didn't turn out so well, and you're going to get rescanned for whatever reason, but your body remembers that old feeling. So when we enter the room of the facility, I invite clients to just sit down and feel what you're feeling. I feel really anxious. I'm scared. My heart's racing. My hands are all clammy. Do this for 90 seconds. I actually invite clients to set their watch or set their phones for 90 seconds and feel what it feels like to be in this place. And then when the timer goes off, I invite them to stand up, take their body with them, go sit somewhere else in the waiting room, and set their watch for 90 seconds. And this time, just focus on what is going well. My eyes flutter open, my fingers move, my lungs inflate, somebody that loves me is sitting next to me, The woman that checked me in is always so pleasant. And then when the timer goes off, now you're at choice. You're at choice to decide, I can go back and sit where I was sitting and feel those feelings because this is what my current situation is. Or I can be a little more open in this moment. Either way, these moments are fleeting. They're not meant to be held on to. So that first point is emotions are meant to be energy in motion. They're meant to flush through us. We're not meant to stuff them or stay in them. The second thing I learned is that our brains have a built-in negativity bias that actually causes us to focus on bad things. This made total sense for our ancestors, as their survival was always at the top of their mind. But our world is not as dangerous. Yet we inherently give more weight to negative experiences than good ones. 3 times more weight. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hansen tells us that the result is like a brain that is Velcro for the negative, but Teflon for the positive. This is a really important point, especially for those of us who have experienced such negative experiences, getting diagnosed with cancer, going through treatment, feeling betrayed by our body, having lots of grief, maybe unprocessed grief. We can hold on to this negativity and by so doing, allow the things that are going well, like people around us that love us, or that we have access to healthcare. Those positive things are just flitting by. We're just letting them go. So it's really important to understand that negative emotions have a sticky effect, and positive emotions are often kind of let go. So the third point is that we need both positive and negative emotions, just like a battery needs both to charge. Positive emotions and negative emotions, they both provide crucial data that help us survive. Negative emotions, they do keep us safe. Their data tells us when something personal and meaningful is out of alignment. And when we experience negative emotions, our thought action options are automatically limited. It's like our world gets a little smaller so that we can keep ourselves safe. The limited options are often based on previous experiences or old stories. Think about like crossing a street, or crossing the street when you see a dog if you were bit by a child. It doesn't mean that all dogs are dangerous. It's just that this negative experience of being bitten by a dog immediately cause us to react to our surroundings. So positive emotions, on the other hand, they don't emerge in threatening situations. They're only able to rise when we do feel safe. And they contribute to our survival in a very different way. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory explains that positive emotions open our perspective. And this process allows us to build new data in the form of personal resources. So, for example, it's likely the positive emotion of interest is what led you to come and be part of this hour that NCCS has created. Interest fills us with a sense of engagement. It encourages us to learn and build intellectual resources that help open our minds to new ways of thinking and acting. So you've learned 3 things. Emotions are fleeting. we have a natural tendency to a negativity bias. And the third one is that positive emotions allow us to open our world a little bit. So I want to take you through an exercise that helps kind of reiterate what happens when we have unprocessed emotions, and then we'll go through something of kind of what we can do about it. So I want you to think of 5 people that you interact with in a day. That might be the people that you live with, or it could be the barista at the coffee shop where you get your coffee, or people that you interact with for work. Just think about 5 of those people. Maybe write them down if you have a piece of paper and a pen. And then next to their names, without giving this too much thought, I want you to think whatever first comes to mind. Write down the emotion that you feel when you see that person. So it might be excitement, it could be frustration. Write down whatever it is that you're feeling when you see that person. And when you reflect on that list, the ones that had a more negative feeling or reaction, I want you to think about whether or not there was an interaction that made you feel that way that you never talked about, that instead you stuffed it. So for example, if a coworker has frustration next to them, was there a time or an interaction that you were actually frustrated with them, but you didn't voice that frustration? You didn't stand up for yourself, and instead you kept it inside. What happens when we repress our emotions? They don't go away. You can stuff and stuff like I did as a child in my diary, but until they are expressed, until they're given light, they still are energetically swimming in there. So what happens in those interactions with other humans where we have not expressed ourselves, that other human has to jump through that energetic hoop that we've created in order to interact with us. And they don't even know that it's happening. When I go through this exercise with clients and we identify somebody in their world where there's a little bit of unexpressed emotion, and I help guide them through having these conversations, 100% of the time, 100% of the time, when they express their emotion to the other person is completely shocked. They had no idea that that interaction had a negative experience for the other person. And they are always just aghast with the opportunity to clear this up. Like, wow, I had no idea I offended you. I had no idea that you thought I lacked support in that. I had no idea that I stepped on your toes in that meeting. I am so sorry. That's 100% of the time the response to when we start to emote. And oftentimes those of us with a type C personality, we don't emote because we don't want to risk the relationship. But by not emoting, we risk the relationship with ourselves and with the other person. And by that, I mean, we let ourselves kind of disappear in the connection. We don't stand up for what we need and what we feel, and instead kind of contort ourselves so to keep the peace or avoid conflict. And when we do that, we're not doing ourselves any service, and we're not doing the connection any service. And these are often skills that we acquired by growing up with and loved into being by people that were doing the best they could with what they had. The good thing about this is that it was a learned behavior, and we can also learn to be more conscious and more self-aware of our emotions and how to express them. So the next thing I wanted to do is just highlight the expansiveness of positive emotions. So I'm hoping that you have a piece of paper and a pen. And I am going, actually, if you have a piece of paper, if you can fold it in half, so you have two sides. And on this first side, I'm going to invite you, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write as many things as you can think about. So here we go. You just got an extra hour to your day. I want you to write down as many things that you can think about that you can accomplish with this extra hour that has just been added to your day. So again, you're going to have 30 seconds, and I don't want you to think too long and hard about it. Just start writing. What would you do with this extra hour of time? And I'll let you know when the time is up. Okay, so that is 30 seconds. So I'm going to invite you to stop and just turn that piece of paper over so you have the blank side. Now, before we get to that blank side, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. I'm going to read something from one of my favorite people. I'll tell you who it is after. So take a breath, maybe feel your feet on the ground, your seat in the seat. And as you take an inhale, feel a nice strong spine, maybe lifting yourself up into the sky above you. And as you exhale, feel that openness, your soft front. So you have a strong spine and a soft front. All of us have special ones who have loved us into being. Would you take, along with me, 10 seconds to think about the people who have helped you become who you are, helped you get to where you are, here in this moment? Those who have cared about you and wanted what was best for you in your life. 10 seconds in silence. I'll mind the time. Whomever you have been thinking about, how pleased they must be to know the difference you feel they've made in your life. Now take another breath in. And I'm going to invite you to take your piece of paper again. And you were just given an extra hour to your day. I want you to write as many things as you can think about doing on this piece of paper. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write that same thing. Write down as many things you can think of that you would do with an extra hour to your day. I'll let you know when the time's up. Okay. Time is up. That's 30 seconds. Now, if you just open your list, so you have both lists, I just want you to look at the list and notice if there's a difference between the one that you wrote originally and the one that you wrote after a positive emotion was elicited. We're going to go into a question and answer that Shelley's going to help us with. But I'm hoping that what you see on that list is that second list was a more expansive options after tapping into a positive emotion. Oftentimes when I do this with my clients, the first list was basically like clean out the closets, and it's like a lot of to-do things that are hanging on. And the second one is more maybe walk in nature, or call a friend, or prepare for dinner, like a more expansive options. And I hope that's what that you might have been able to see in that short exercise. So emotions are fleeting. We have a negativity bias that we need to be conscious of. And positive emotions have kind of a superpower that allow us to see more of the world around us. Those three things can help begin to open the doors to emotional awareness, where we can begin to express ourselves more clearly and do the work so that we can pull that emotional health lever and help ourselves be healthy. By the way, that quote that I read to you was from Mr. Rogers, as that was his acceptance speech at the Emmy Awards back in 1997. He's one of I love that human, and I remember him as a child. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Shelley, and hopefully have a little bit of a conversation about emotions. There she is.
Thank you. That was awesome. And Rick, in our comment in the Q&A, knew that was Mr. Rogers.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Another fan of another fan.
So quite a big fan of Mr. Rogers. Definitely grew up with him. And I know Veronica is as well, because of course he's from Pittsburgh, where Veronica is from.
Okay, I did not know that fact.
Yes. If you ever go to Pittsburgh, you will see Mr. Rogers everywhere there. It is like he's sort of the hero of Pittsburgh.
Okay, reason to go to Pittsburgh.
Yes, and you can visit Veronica. So we have some questions coming in. I'm going to start with one that was submitted before. How do you deal with the emotions of watch and wait, or the uncertainty of the future?
Yes, emotions we can be pulled by the past or pushed by the future. And often what is required is a presence in the moment, which is really hard. And I would use this similar practice as I talked about, where you're just in the moment, feeling what you're feeling, like grounding yourself in the present moment. And it could very well be about the future. I'm nervous, my heart's racing, and really connecting it to your body. Doing that and then stepping into another place and feeling the positive in this moment almost gives you like I call it sense drenching. It's like a sense drenching in the present moment. So it's not a bad thing that you're thinking about the future or thinking about the past. It's a practice to become present in this moment and know that in this moment, I'm okay. So it's not about beating yourself about thinking about the future. It's about giving more opportunities for yourself to be in this moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the fact, I liked what you said about the positive emotions help you kind of expand your horizons, and then you can think about, so you're not saying to not feel not, I think that, you know, when you talk about positive psychology, there's also, I've heard about, you know, toxic positivity, and it's not saying you have to be positive all the time. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what's the difference between the positive psychology and what, you know, people think about as toxic positivity? Because you're not trying to stuff those emotions, but just, I'll let you talk about that.
Yes, that toxic positivity, that is not allowing yourself to feel. Like, you want to give yourself permission to feel it all, because it all has data to give you. Negative emotions, there's this discernment that you get to once you're doing a lot of this emotional self-awareness, where you realize, oh, that negative emotion is an old recycled emotion. It's based on a past experience that I keep kicking up. And there's this discernment whether, like, am I ready to let that go, versus a new negative emotion that's saying, hey, wait a minute, there's an emotion maybe of guilt that's basically saying there's something out of alignment in my values in this moment. It's, look at me. So being positive all the time basically says, oh no, don't listen to that data that your negative emotions are saying. And it's really important data. So any emotion, every emotion is fleeting. You are not meant to stand in any one emotion all of the time. So understanding that fact, that means you're not meant to be positive all the time or have a positive outlook. And people with type C often default to that. And this might sound familiar, where somebody's like, how are you feeling, Shelley? Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because if you really spoke about how you're feeling, I'm feeling really anxious about this test, the scans I have coming up this afternoon. Then in your mind, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to stress this other person out. I'm going to worry my family members. I'm going to be a burden on other people. And so you're avoiding the real feelings and layering it on with this false sense of positivity, which again, doesn't give this other person the opportunity to give you what you need, which is, oh my goodness, how can I be a support to you in this moment? What can I do to help you?
Mm-hmm. It's almost like inviting the positive emotions to help give you another perspective, but not forcing the positive.
Right. You don't want to force the positive. And when you realize, like, just think about if you're going in for a test, a scan, often we're so anxious that, or any doctor appointment, you go into a doctor appointment and you're so anxious that whatever they're saying is like Charlie Brown teacher, until they say something like recurrence. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I heard that. I heard recurrence. I didn't hear the wah, 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 because I'm in this negative, anxious emotion where I'm very guarded. But if you go in after you spend this time in the waiting room, going from one chair to another, realizing like, oh, I can go in and out of emotions, and I am at choice to have a more open emotional availability, that when I go into my doctor's appointment, I can actually hear more. And that's scientific. You hear more, you see more, your vision, when you're in fight or flight, your vision is reduced. And your hearing is limited, or honing in on certain vibrations. So when you're in a positive state, your vision expands, as well as your auditory. Like, so many fascinating things happen when you're in a positive state.
Great, thank you. So how do you deal? What do you suggest is the best way to work or cope through survivor's remorse?
Survivor's remorse. Would we use guilt in the same? Yeah,
that's how I would take it. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Again, I think there's a proclivity for a type C, somebody that aligns with type C coping mechanisms of people pleasing, or it's almost like a devaluing of self.
Mm.
So there's an invitation to just swim in your own sense of worth, that you matter, that it is your moment to be here on this earth. And that valuation of yourself, that feeling like, oh, my life is significant. It's living from the inside out versus the outside in. So not worrying so much about other people or why other people didn't get through cancer and you did. It's kind of like the same thing, turning that negativity bias on its head and realizing, wow, I'm here. I have value, and how am I going to express this value to the world?
Yeah, that's great. So how would you respond to people who are not really hearing what you're saying or accepting your true feelings?
Again, it's you can't control what other people are thinking and feeling. You are the master of your own little universe. And everybody comes to every connection with their own stuff. I always think about it when I talk about it with clients. I say, imagine back in the day, you're a knight in shining armor. And so you're going to that joust fight and you put on your armor. And I don't know about you, but whenever I see that on TV, I think it looks so heavy. All of those, the headgear and the protective gear. And then you have help getting on a horse and they hand you this little stick. And all it takes is one little jab for you to fall off your horse because everything's so heavy. And I wonder, what would it feel like if we could take off our armor and show up on the field just as another human? It just lightens the load of everything. So when you realize, like, I'm not in control of other people's feelings, they deserve to feel what they're feeling. And maybe they just can't handle my whatever in this moment. And I need to reach out to another friend or another person to get what it is that I need. I often say, you don't go to Home Depot for milk and eggs. Sometimes we're going to specific people for emotional support when they're just not capable. But there might be another person in our universe that is capable of that kind of response that we're looking for. So it's, I guess, to answer that question, it's understanding what it is that you need and realizing that not all people are going to meet you there where you're at.
I love that. You don't go to Home Depot for eggs and bread. That's this question is from Amy, who's a RN case manager for cancer patients. And she said, I want to know what you feel is the best way to support my patients best, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually.
Amy, I love that question. And I've worked with many different groups of nurses and doctors to help them understand how using positive psychology can open people up and express themselves in the way that they need. So, for example, when your client comes in and you can see they're visibly shaken, it's that moment where you sit next to them or you sit across from them and you look at them in their eye and you say, what is it that you need most from our time together today? Just opening the door for them to realize, like, oh, this is another human that's across from me that cares and you're setting this safe container for them to be able to express, versus just feel what it feels like, this other option of your client comes in, you're looking at your watch because you know you have 3 other people in rooms down the hall, and you have 9 minutes with this person, and you say, so what's up? What's happening? It's a very different feel than looking at them in the eye and say, how can I help you in this moment? What would be valuable for you in this moment? It's really just a feeling that you're giving another person to open up and ask for what they need.
I think that could be useful in so many different areas, but I think that's great for, when you think of, I think we all know to expect that our doctors don't have a lot of time for us usually, but that's kind of the beauty of the nurses and the other healthcare professionals that have a little bit more time and can really be the person that we go to for, some of those other questions or the other support. And I think that's a beautiful way of asking people what they need.
Yes.
So hold on one second. We have another. This is an interesting question. Is there a timeline when certain things should happen in the healing process?
Oh gosh, I wish there were. It's a little bit like we're such complicated beings, and there's so much that comes into the mix. If we were just actually, when I got divorced six years ago, it was devastating. The end of my marriage was horrible. It ended in betrayal. And I look back at that time, and I'm so grateful that all I had to worry about was me. My children had gone off to college. They were both actually, one was living in Australia, the other one was in Spain. So I really had just me to focus on. And I wish that for every human, that when you're going through something difficult, that it's all about you and you don't have to worry about other people in your life. So that I say that because healing happens when we can spend some time in ourselves, like contemplating ourselves, understanding what we feel and how we feel. And often we don't give ourselves that time because we're busy doing for other people. So healing comes when you can be quiet, when you're in safe spaces. And it comes in the craziest of places. You can be with humans, with other humans, laughing or just finding moments of joy. And when you do have those positive moments, really letting yourself sense drench in them to make them sticky so that you can start to override all of the negative or the pain and suffering that you've gone through. Did we lose Shelley?
We might. Oh, there's Shelley.
There
I just wanted to make sure that Shelley's camera was working again.
I don't know why it went off. I didn't touch it, but
but it is so wonderful to have you, Kathy, and I'm going to let Shelley. I'm just here to make sure that there's someone for you to talk to today.
Okay, here's the question. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, but this person says that everybody was very supportive when she was going through her treatment, but now 18 months later, they don't want to know anymore they don't want to hear about recurrence and scans. And she has a supportive husband, but otherwise feels she's on her own, and that others are more afraid than she is. And she feels like a burden opening up to them about what she feared.
Yes, this is a special question because it's I break the people in our lives into 2 groups. Sounds a little crude, but they're either our ground crew, those people that have loved us into being and know us in a certain light. And then there's our co-pilots. And co-pilots come in many, many different forms. They can be therapists, they can be doctors, they can be coaches, they can be peers in supportive groups, where places that you can go. Because what this question really is you're a changed person in an unchanged environment. So much has changed for you, but those people that have loved you into being, they kind of want you in the old place. They want you to go back to normal. They want things to be the way they used to be. It worries them that you're going through these things. So the onus is kind of on you to find some co-pilots where you can express this changed version of you, places that you can go to say, hey, these scans suck, or my sexuality is no longer what it used to be, and I can't have this conversation with my husband, but where can I have this conversation so I can normalize it, this new version of me? There's for young breast cancer survivors, there's a woman, her name's April Stearns, and she has an online community as well as a magazine that comes out quarterly called Wildfire Magazine. And the quarterly magazine is based on topics. So it might be sexuality, it might be money and cancer, it might be your body. And it's stories from all people just like you expressing their feelings about that issue. So finding your co-pilots is crucial, because you can't change the ground crew. They're really hard to change. I hope that helps.
Great analogy. So can you comment, based on your experience, on introducing spirituality into the cancer patient care pathway, and how would you define spirituality?
I define spirituality as meaning and purpose. That might not be the same as what you often think of spirituality as, which might be religion or faith. Meaning and purpose is really important for any human, especially people that have gone through a tumultuous health experience. It's like this kind of like, oh, wait, what am I here to do in the world? And I just got a little awakening there. What can I do next? Lisa Miller is a psychologist. I think she's in New York, but she does a lot around spirituality and it being the antidote for loneliness. She has a phenomenal TED Talk. I don't remember the topic of it, but if you just Google Lisa Miller spirituality, she does a beautiful job of reconnecting us to that part of ourselves.
Great, thank you. How do you deal with the anger over what was taken away?
It's such a beautiful question, and so often ignored because we stuff it, because we should be grateful, right? We're still alive. What do we have to be angry about? But you should be angry. It's not fair what happened. So to me, the anger and the grief are a little bit intertwined, because life isn't going to be what you thought it was. And so that processing of grief, the one thing I would say is don't stuff it. It does not do anything for your health to stuff that anger. So finding ways to express anger through talk therapy. Therapists are fabulous at this. If that's not accessible to you, punching pillows, writing your anger with the simple prompt of what did cancer take away from me, or what am I angry about? Writing is kind of attached to our heart. So if you write it versus type it, I would strongly suggest that you write it. and then burn it. Like, have a ceremony. Let your anger be expressed. It's very, very important. Suppressing anger is not good for your immune system.
But how do you, feel it without letting it consume you? I mean, I think burning it is, writing it and burning it is one way, but then what if it's still there? I mean, that's the thing, is like some people let the anger consume them, and then other people stuff it and don't feel it.
Right. And the magic is the expression of it, finding ways to express it.
Mm-hmm.
So the consuming of it is that it's still inside you. So the first opening might be to start writing, and start writing for yourself. Nobody's going to read it. Lisa Weiner, she has a beautiful book called Narrative Healing. And she has a whole section about anger. Writing is the broken opening to much anger that we often keep inside. That's like a first step. The next step is speaking it aloud in a safe place with a person that can hear you and not try to fix you, not try to give their opinion about your anger. It's really saying to a trusted friend, I have some anger about something that I just need to get out. Will you listen? Can you listen to me? Can you hold that space for me? And being really, really careful about who you choose, and being really clear about what the options. This is not for you to solve. I just need somebody to witness my anger. That's often what we need as humans, just to be heard. And it starts to dissipate. You start to lessen the grip that the anger has on you. You have every right to your anger.
Yeah. Someone else commented that Dr. James Pennebaker has some expressive writing protocols that could help as well.
Yes, Lisa Weinhardt's work is based on his research. Yes.
So another question is, did you have any help with your emotional life while you were going through chemotherapy or going through your treatment? So how did you come to this then? Because you didn't have it, you went out to find it?
Yes. Well, it was kind of a long road. I did not have it. And I can see now, 20 years ago, there were many, many times when I was suffering greatly and I shut the door of other people. I remember one night in the hospital, my treatment was 24 hours a day for 7 days. And then I would go home for a week and then come back. And there was one time that I was in the bathroom and I had kind of passed out, and the nurse found me and she was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm taking a shower." She's like, no, that's not what you're supposed to be doing right now. You need to ask for help. And I said, no, I'm fine. And she said, clearly you're not fine. You're on the floor of the bathroom. You need to learn how to ask for help. And that's something that was not in my ability. So going through treatment, I did it all myself. No, I'm good. You don't need to help me. Stuffed my feelings. I had stage 4 vulvar cancer. So sex was really painful, difficult, awful. Nobody to talk to about it. So instead, I numbed myself in order to have sex with my husband. And I would almost have this out of body experience. And I numbed myself both using alcohol and prescription drugs. And then my marriage ended. And then I realized, emotions. Never did I ever express how I feel or what I needed in this relationship of 25 years. And it makes perfect sense that by not doing that, I stayed in my suffering. So when I found positive psychology, it just was the opening to me being able to finally feel and then express myself. And I realized this was a big missing piece for me 20 years ago. And I do not want somebody to stay in the dark for 15 years and be in such pain, silently suffering. It's just, if I could have a wand, it would be to make sure that nobody has that experience.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. Another question is, self-care is critical, but how can we get healthcare systems to make oncology social workers more proactive and meet patients at the beginning of their journey?
Yes, I have a podcast. It's called Investment of Self, and I interviewed this gentleman, Dan Ovitt, who is a prehab. He's not rehab, he's prehab, and that's something I had never heard of. And that is these co-pilots meet you before to help set the stage for the future. So this has become a thing. He was one of the first cohort. He was one of the first rehabilitation specialists that went through this prehab training. And it's becoming more prevalent. The onus again is on you to ask for what you need at the beginning and raise that question. Look up prehab for cancer. There may be a clinic near you. It's really important for you to advocate for yourself. And I know that sounds awful. It's a moment where you're at your weakest point, but we're often asked the most of at these weakest or these most painful points in our life. It's where we can kind of dig in and find that thing that we need and know that there is help to be had. And we have it at the end of our fingertips now. So getting that help that you need.
I think this is probably the last question. How do you deal with anger at others for not being there or being supportive of you during treatment when you were like Kathy and didn't ask for help, but then you're still mad at them for not helping you and then feeling guilty about it?
Yes. It's a trap. We trap ourselves. It's this vortex trap that we get stuck in. And here I invite not only you, the permission to be human, but also invite others, give them the permission to be human. I had one friend who I thought was a really close friend of mine. We went through our yoga teacher training program together, and she just disappeared. And through that 12 months, I really got close with her. And I thought, for sure, she could be this other person outside of my ground crew. And she just didn't show up at all. And years later, I bumped into her and she apologized. Her mother died of cancer, which I did not know. And here I was probably 8 years older than she was, but she just couldn't, it raised too many issues for her. I did not know that. So I instead stuffed all these emotions, had all this resentment for another human being who was also suffering and who couldn't come up to that. So it's really the idea of separating ourselves. We become so enmeshed in other people's lives, but when we can separate ourselves and notice, and Dr. Rick Hansen has a beautiful practice where you just look at this person that you're struggling with and you notice, she has a nose, I have a nose. Or she has an elbow, I have an elbow. Just doing that kind of brings the whole thing back down to a connection with another human. And then the magic for me in positive psychology and positive emotions is invoke your curiosity and say to the other person, I'm really curious why you didn't XYZ or why you couldn't LMNOP. Bringing curiosity opens that up for the other person to be able to say, oh, I couldn't be there for you because, you know, I helped my mother through cancer and I just couldn't do it. I'm sorry, I wasn't there for you. So that human to human contact, we often think they're against us. And so we stuff our emotions and create all this strife inside us, when really it's an opportunity for connection to the people that we love. You just have to say the hard thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think approaching it from curiosity is a great way to do that.
Curiosity is king, queen, whatever you want to call it. It's a magical, it immediately deflates a tensious situation.
Thank you so much, Kathy. A lot of wonderful comments about thanking you for your vulnerability, for talking about your experience. And a lot of people, I think, really identified with a lot of what you said. I want to end with a comment from Cora, one of our CPAT members. She said, "I think you are just brilliant, and meeting you at the symposium is one of the positive highlights of my year. Thank you for being you and for giving us these tools to help us navigate life."
Oh,
thank you so much, Kathy, for being here and for all that you shared. That is helpful for everyone. I'm not a cancer survivor, but I got so much out of this, and I know that you've given us so much to think about and so many tools to help us. So we really appreciate you.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here, and thank all of you for the gift of time and the gift that you're giving yourself just to even think about something different.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy holidays.
I wish you well.
Bye.
Bye.